Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another Top Cut breakdown video. Today we'll be going over two tournaments that took place over the course of release weekend for Set 13, a Louisiana 1K and a Store Championship at Most Excellent Gaming in Connecticut. We'll be talking about them, seeing what Set 13 is looking like it'll do at the beginning of this format. We'll get into it. Before we do that though, if you guys are new here, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell so you never miss a video. And if you guys want to prep for competitive events, make sure to check out the Patreon down in the description below. You can read the articles there, see where my head's at competitively. You can also inquire about some coaching if you're interested in that. That being said, let's get started. Okay, so both of these events, IRL best of 3 events. Not the biggest events we've ever covered by any means. None of the big players, or big TOs rather, had major tournaments over the weekend. But I did want to cover something for you guys for release weekend at Set 13, just to see what the meta looks like at the very beginning, right? So for the Louisiana 1K top 8, 24 players. First place, Dark Broly. Second place, Mecha Frieza. Third place, King Vegeta. Fourth place, Soul Striker Gohan. And when I read Soul Striker Gohan, I was like, you got to give me more info on that. I'm going to have this profile on the channel this week, so stay tuned for it. A Green Gotenks, a King Vegeta, another Soul Striker Gohan, and another Mecha Frieza. So this particular top 8 looks pretty uniform in the sense that Dark Broly, a deck we expect to win even in Set 13. We'll talk a bit more about that later on. Double Mecha Frieza, double King Vegeta, double Soul Striker Gohan, although Soul Striker Gohan not very expected, but still, like, there's a lot of similarities in this top 8. Now we go over to the Most Excellent Connecticut Store Championship with 26 players. We have Red, Blue, Green Launch as the first place deck. Definitely not a deck we expect to win. Launch, while it is perceived as a good deck, definitely has never been one of the top decks of the meta. And again, keep in mind, smaller tournament, not the best sample size to pick like exclusive data from. We're not going to say Launch is the best deck by any means, but with this in mind, it is something cool to see that in a sort of semi-decently big event, COVID wise, this deck did come to a first place finish with a tricolor variant, which is kind of cool. Another second place Mecha Frieza, same thing from the top 8 of Louisiana 1K. Green OG Broly in third place. Red Green Bardocks Crew in fourth place. We'll get to that in just a bit. Red Black, Skillless Bonds of Friendship Goku. I haven't seen that in super long. Another Green Gotenks, a Red Broly, believe it or not, and then another Mecha Frieza. So these results here are very cool. There's a lot of cool decks here to discuss. Let's get into it. Alright, so firstly, normally we talk about the first place decks before anything else, but since it's Set 13 release weekend, we're talking about the meta here. I do want to talk about the newcomers before we get into the winning decks. So King Vegeta, what's really cool is we saw a lot of this in the Louisiana event, not so much in the Connecticut event, but still, I think King Vegeta is one of the best decks coming out of Set 13. But one thing we will notice is that Set 13 doesn't like completely shift the meta. It almost operates like Evolution Booster, in the sense that it does introduce some cool new strategies to the meta, but it doesn't really turn the meta over onto its head, right? And obviously Set 13 is doing that to a much greater effect than Evolution Booster did. Evolution Booster really only introduced like 1 or 2 cool decks and a few, really strong cards. Set 13 does that to a much larger degree, but it's not toppling the entire meta, which is something that I feel like needs to be kind of made apparent. And we'll see if this changes more as weeks go on, but from this preliminary data, that's what we're kind of seeing. But King Vegeta, incredibly strong. I've talked about it many times. This is probably my favorite deck out of Set 13. It's capable of being quite aggressive, but SSB Vegeta at full power is honestly a super strong boss monster. Like, 1, you're punishing your opponent for playing battle cards and for attacking you. 2, it's a beefy 25k double striker with deflect you can play for 3 that draws a card. And the next thing is it crits your opponent a life if they remove it from the board. Now, you get into some really sticky scenarios if your opponent's playing Heroine's Lineage, because if they steal Vegeta from you, you're actually going to burn a life because they're now the owner of the card, which gets really weird. But then again, if you remove it from their board, you then become the owner of it again because it goes to your drop area, so you'll burn them for a life. So pretty good interaction you're going to want to know about, considering how popular Heroine's Lineage has been and how popular I expect King Vegeta to be going forward. Definitely an interaction you'll want to know about, but I do think King Vegeta is a really strong pick. Definitely not surprised to be talking about it in today's video. Then we have Red Green Bardocks Crew. Now, I'm not surprised to be talking about Bardocks Crew, but I am surprised to be talking about Red Green Bardocks Crew. I really thought this deck would do much better as mono red, and who knows, maybe as time goes on that'll prove to be true. But when you're looking at Red Green and you know that Bardocks Crew is an aggro strategy, you know this deck probably revolves around Piccolo Jr. Eradicator of Peace. What's really cool about this Bardocks Crew deck and Piccolo Jr. Eradicator of Peace is that you're able to put alliance targets into play for free via the leader's skill to attack and play a red Sam with energy cost of 1, right? So what's nice is you can, you know, tap out for Piccolo Jr. on 2, or basically play it at any course of the game, and you're going to be able to put that alliance target into play, assuming your opponent doesn't have like some sort of counterplay or some way to interrupt that from happening, right? But a lot of the time you're going to be able to do that, and that's going to be where Piccolo Jr. is able to shine, right? Like we saw in launch where Piccolo Jr. was seeing the most play. That launch had a lot of ways to put battle cards into play for free, but sometimes they required you to jump through hoops. With a deck like Bardock that can do it inherently via the leader, that is gonna, you know, be really good for Piccolo Jr. Eradicator of Peace. I'm not quite sure if this variant of the deck will continue to do so well going forward. I think red-green does offer some clunk issues as certain metas develop, but besides that, it is cool to see it. I'm sure we'll see it every once in a while. I am curious to see, though, if we'll see Mono Red Bardocks Crew going forward. And then we have the Soul Striker Gohan deck. So I did mention in a video, I think last week when I was talking about the meta predictions going into set 13, that a lot of what Gohan's able to do, Soul Striker can also pretty much do that. Now, the one thing you can't do in Soul Striker that Gohan can do is play the energy fortification 1-drops that allow you to play skillless battle cards out of your energy. But where Soul Striker makes up for that is with Goku and Nimbus Master, a really strong skillless support piece coming out of, I think it was draft box 6. So by comboing that on defense, you get to play a skillless straight from your deck. So really nothing lost there. Now, Soul Striker is very arguably a better leader than Gohan coming out of set 13 when you are able to still play that same skillless engine. But I think time will tell once again with the same thing. You know, is Soul Striker going to remain that kind of bastion of that blue skillless beatdown slash, you know, Gohan astonishing strike type of deck? Time will tell. It does sort of seem like Soul Striker might just be the better leader. If you kind of look at it, the Gohan leader untaps 1 energy per turn, Soul Striker untaps 2 energy per turn, although certain silver bullets do hurt Soul Striker more than they hurt blue Gohan. So it might kind of depend if the meta starts to recognize this as a real deck or not, and if they start siding against it. Then in that case, maybe Gohan will be better, but I do definitely think we'll see a lot more innovation as we go into set 13 as it you know, relates to these types of blue decks. And then for the final newcomer, Mecha Frieza, not necessarily a newcomer, but Power of a Super Saiyan, definitely going to be a card that shakes up yellow a lot going into set 13. I think Mecha Frieza honestly just becomes a beast as a result of Power of a Super Saiyan. Yes, it does indirectly buff other yellow decks, but Mecha Frieza was already the best yellow deck, so when they get a new toy like Power of a Super Saiyan to play with, it's not going to be, you know, a lot of fun for other players. But anyways, I am getting one of the second place Mecha Frieza lists here on the channel, so stay tuned for that. We'll be talking with that player, seeing what he thinks about Mecha going forward with the new stuff they got to play with. Now talking about the winners of the events, we have one that is very expected, Dark Broly, and one that is not so expected, Red, Blue, Green launch. Talking about Dark Broly first, I don't think anyone really thought that anything in set 13 was going to directly push Dark Broly out of the meta. Yes, it still has its checks and balances like Violent Rays and in a lot of cases Blue Baby and Heroic Prospect Trunks. Blue might be a bigger up-and-comer now that other blue decks seem to be doing kind of well, and Blue Baby I'm sure will always be there in some form or capacity. Didn't quite top an event this weekend that we're made aware of, but I think it's still a very good deck nonetheless. But Dark Broly, definitely not surprising that it's won a smaller event here. And the Red, Blue, Green launch, I think the deck is very powerful, and the deck has a very high ceiling because of that tricolor and your ability to untap energy on your opponent's turn. So basically what Red, Blue, Green launch does is it gives you a defensive advantage where Red Green launch didn't have that, right? Like, you're very clunky in Red Green, you're not able to defend all the best in a lot of cases, but the Red Blue Green with Beer Super combo kind of fixes that. You can sometimes run into other bricking problems, but the fact that launch draws so much can sometimes fix that. Not the perfect deck by any means, but very cool to see this deck do pretty well at an almost 30-man tournament. Then we do have the Green Gotenks, one in each event, which definitely is quite surprising. If anyone thought they were going to see a green deck this weekend, it probably was going to be King Cole, but that wasn't the case here. Green Gotenks, though, has been hanging on for dear life over the past few weeks. We've seen it here or there, so maybe there is something more to Green Gotenks that people aren't quite seeing. I'd definitely be very curious to know what you guys think about that down in the comments. Bonds of Friendship Goku, we have not seen this in quite some time. I want to say, like, since set 11. It did a lot of things in set 10 actually, where it got a lot of anniversary box support, but yeah, set 11 I think was the last time we saw this deck top any sort of event. But this was a red-black skillless Bonds of Friendship Goku. Now, I don't think we'll be seeing a lot of this going forward. I really just think that this deck has lost a lot of its edge, a lot of its excitement factor. But I think it's still a deck that draws an insane amount of cards, and that's always going to benefit you in Dragon Ball Super as long as Combo Power is the name of the game, right? Another card this deck probably played was Goku Path to Power, a really solid card out of Evolution Booster. Basically, for 2 energy, you get a 25k Double Striker and a 25k skillless, so that's a lot of pressure for very cheap. I think that card is really cool. Also saw play in the Soul Striker Gohan, which we'll see in the profile later this week. And we do have one red Broly. Again, another fringe aggro deck. What a lot of people thought would be one of the best decks ever to a degree. This deck has not really taken to that sort of mantle, but I think it's still a deck we'll see here or there. Not anything crazy surprising. And that's going to wrap it up for today's videos, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of little snapshot at the set 13 meta. Again, not perfect info to go off of, but I think it is cool still to just look at what people are playing, even if it is more on a local level. Still, these events, you know, we're almost 30-ish players, which is kind of a good number for COVID kind of standards, right? But anyways, I do want in the comments below what you think. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.